So we've had a representative from Airbnb speak at this conference, actually since we started in Europe, and I remember when your predecessor first spoke, and at that time he just made the announcement that, I think that year, Europe had become the largest market for Airbnb. But you guys have grown dramatically, globally, and Asia has been a market you've talked about a lot. So can you just give us a rundown, maybe a little bit more deeper than just the 4.2 or 4.3 million listings, but where is Airbnb today in terms of scale and growth, and where does Europe fit into that?
Sure. So we're celebrating this year, actually. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary. 10th anniversary since two of the founders inflated their first airbeds. So a lot of things changed.
Are you no longer a startup?
We're trying to keep the mentality of a startup. I think it's a very important one for us. But at the same time, we also need to consolidate a lot more things due to the scale that we have. So we need to find the best of both worlds, which I think is a lot of companies struggle with. Right?
How do you keep sorry, I'm not letting you answer the first question, but how do you maintain that culture of a startup when you have a private market valuation of 31 billion, you've got how many thousands of employees around the world? How do you do that?
It's a really good question. I think one of the things that sets us apart is the fact that we are founder-led. So being founder-led, and Brian has a tremendous influence still on the entire company. He's not just the CEO, but he's also a little bit the heart and the soul of the company. And that really helps us to do several things. So the first thing is the constant drive for that mission, right? A lot of people, if you take a look at the Glassdoor interviews of people talking about Airbnb, whether it's their current or their ex-company, they constantly remind themselves about the mission. Our mission is belong anywhere, and a lot of people are appealed by that. So they go the extra mile in order to work for a company that has such a strong mission. The second one...
What is your mission?
Belong anywhere. So no matter where you go, no matter where you stay, you feel that you belong in the place that you are at that moment in time. Okay, so that's the first one. I think the second one is the obsession with being on the ground. I think right at the beginning, one of the things that the founders did really well was getting to know their individual users. Could be guest, could be host. They didn't just get to know them, they actually lived with them. They went to New York and stayed with all of the individual hosts. That's where some of the initial ideas of the photography, professional photography for everybody started, right? We need to continue to make.
But how do you do that with a scale? I mean, that is the fundamental challenge with 4 million plus listings. How do you maintain that?
For me, it's the culture of maintaining that. And the culture of maintaining that is hiring the right people, making sure that people continue to be engaged, and our engagement score. So overall, in all of the companies, 13% of the people feel engaged with the work that they do. 13%, 13%, right? If you take a look at Airbnb, our engagement scores are above 80%. That engagement scores are really the driver, I think, for the fact that we continue to innovate, the fact that we continue to be a startup. It could be in very small things, and it could be really broad, new, very ambitious ideas. But it starts with everybody, and we need to maintain that engagement because that's a special sauce that sets a company like Airbnb apart.
But the company is also going through some pretty extraordinary changes. We've seen certain areas, new product areas like experiences and other things that you've talked about, which I think fit into that kind of visionary ideal, right, that you described. But on the other hand, there are things that you guys are doing more, like engaging with large property management companies. And there's a lot of debate about the extent to which you've gone from that kind of individual host experience to becoming more of a kind of a commodity type of marketplace, and then going into hotels as well. So how do you grow and scale and still like how can I feel like I belong somewhere where there's no check-in desk and I'm just getting into my apartment with a
It's a really good question, and we've debated that a lot internally within the company. So we started from an extreme. The very first listing was both business travel. People were staying on the 3 initial air mattresses for business in a way, and it was home sharing. So we've grown in those 10 years. We've grown from a home sharing company to an accommodation company to what I would now call a travel/hospitality company. And that's a little bit like, in a nutshell, that's the evolution that we've seen over the last 10 years. It's true that as you become bigger and as you start to appeal to bigger audience, so 300 million people have stayed with us, and those are 300 million individuals that look for something different, something unique, right? So there's traditional hospitality providers that fit the classification of providing unique and great hospitality experiences perfectly. You don't have to be an individual. You could be a professional at it. And therefore, we need to find the right balance of saying there's individuals. 72% of our entire inventory of all of the listings, all of the homes that we have on the platform is still unique to us. So starting with that. There is, however, another audience. Our internal audience, the millennials that used to use Airbnb 5 years ago, 6 years ago, started to grow. They start to have families. They start to have jobs. So we need to cater to that audience, and that's the first thing that we try to do. Amongst the 5 million listings that we have, it was really hard to find. So we did a classification, and then we also called out specific segments, right? Specific collections, both for Airbnb for work, as well as Airbnb for families. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we also realize if our mission is belong everywhere, and we want everybody to be encompassed by that, that we need to go to the next step. So there's a lot of people who still think that Airbnb is more for the backpackers, for the millennials, for budget travel. And that's something that we wanted to change. So what we did in order to do that is, one, we expanded with 2 categories, boutique hotels and bed and breakfast. And expanding is a relative word because we already had 180,000 boutique hotel rooms on our platform. We already had 25,000 bed and breakfast, sorry. We already had 25,000 boutique hotel rooms on our platform. So it's just, they were on there. We didn't provide them the right tools in order to operate efficiently, and they were getting really good experience, because if you don't provide the right experience, you don't belong on the platform.
Okay, but there's also a lot of, say vacation rental kind of condo, and even there's been some reporting of some large, I think there's one host that had like, I don't know, 800, basically Wyndham timeshare units that they had put, on the platform. So is that kind of content, is that welcome? Does that have a place? Like, is there a future where there is more kind of, I would say, mass market or commoditized product?
There's definitely a market for that, I think.
But is that market on Airbnb?
We need to, it's a very fine line between something that people are looking for and maintaining our DNA of personalized hospitality, right? People-powered, driven hospitality. That's where I think, even though there might be a more unified approach, a more structured approach, a more an anonymous approach to the accommodation, where our experiences can provide an additional layer in order to provide that differentiation. Not everybody wants to stay with a host or have that hug upon arrival, which is completely fine. If you're traveling with your family and you want to maximize the time you spend with them during your vacation, during 1 or 2 weeks when you're in the south of France, which is completely fine, completely understandable. At the same time, we want to make sure that hospitality, for me, what sets it apart is the fact that it's experience-driven and the experiences are provided by people. So that's something with our experience layer that we can put on top of that for saying if my accommodation is cross-listed, that we can still provide
but every hotel has people. You go to any hotel, you have an experience. So what distinguishes, if I book a boutique hotel on Airbnb, and I book that same boutique hotel on Expedia or Booking.com, how is my experience different?
Yeah, I think in that specific example, we wanted to make sure that everybody is finding whatever they're looking for on Airbnb. So if you're booking exactly the same hotel on an Airbnb or on a Booking.com, I think the experience is not going to be necessarily that different, right? I think our UI sets it apart. I think our customer service, that's 24 hours, our guarantees, our reviews, and so on. So the user experience of booking could set it apart. And then we're looking at the overall trip, the overall experience. What are some of the other touch points where we can interact with you, where we can make sure is that whether you're staying for business or for leisure, that we still provide that uniqueness of the trip.
So there's been a lot of critics of Airbnb over the years. I think increasingly some of the hotel companies have been, over the years, quite critical. But there's one quote I just want to bring up just to kind of wrap up this conversation. There's an article that quoted Sébastien Bazin of Accor Hotels. And so he's spoken quite a bit about you, in some cases very admiringly about Airbnb. But this I thought was quite interesting. He said, this was earlier this year, Airbnb has lost its soul. It's become volume-driven and not emotion-driven. Is that?
It goes back to what we were talking about, right? If you take a look at the core of everything we do is still people-powered. Again, 72% of our entire listings, of an entire base, is unique to Airbnb. Is an individual. That's what we've done. That's how we've grown, and that's what we need to treasure. Now, if you
how many of those are by individual proprietors as opposed to kind of multi-unit operators?
No, so 80% of the listings that we have are owned by individuals.
Or individuals, okay.
Is somebody renting out their primary or their secondary space. Yeah. It even goes further. 53% of the people say this actually helps me to pay my rent and to pay my mortgage. So it goes beyond that, right? But to come back to your point, so that's one thing. We don't want to be a commodity. We want to be a community-driven brand, and that's one way of doing it. The fact that community-driven brand doesn't overly invest in necessarily the marketing. We don't have the same budget as some of the other OTAs. What we do specifically well is word of mouth. Yeah, continue to have a great experience. NPS for me is one of the critical metrics of making sure that people can talk about Airbnb, and when they talk about Airbnb, they continue to talk about it in a positive way, because the opposite could work, and it works. A negative experience is 10 times more viral than a positive experience. But 60% of all the traffic we have is organic traffic. So we have a very good word of mouth machine based upon the good personal experiences that we provide.
How big do you think hotels as a category could be? I mean, you've done some very clear kind of proactive industry engagement and marketing. I think I've seen some material too, which is basically said, hey, it's 3% if you list your hotel on Airbnb. That's a lot better than 15, 20+% on other companies that also offer hotel booking. So clearly you want more and more hotels. 5 years from now, is our hotels 5%, 25%?
Yeah, let me just clarify, and you know this, but our business model is not the 3%. So we have a host fee and we have a guest fee. The difference is that it's variable, and we can actually play with that depending on the quantity. The higher the quantity, lower the volume of the take rate and so on. So we need to make sure is that we compare apples to apples. So that's the one thing. And then we've seen that actually it's the hotels who are looking for diversification of channels. I say we have a high dependency on very few channels. We want to make sure is that we're able to diversify that. If it's at a better cost, even better. But diversification, I think, is the main driver for that. How big can it be? It's hard to say at the moment. We've just started. I think we've announced it in February. This is something that's going to continue to evolve, and we have still a lot of work to do in order to get to where we want to get and to continue to provide that great service that we were known for on the peer-to-peer side, also to the more traditional hospitality side.
Now, I think I've also read that you're doing some experiments where you're offering kind of a higher kind of commission and a lower consumer fee with certain properties to see if that will drive more business.
We're constantly. This is not something new. This is not something that we're at the moment rolling out globally. But we're constantly testing out these things. Right? We have 100 A/B tests going on in parallel at the same time. This is just one of them. Yeah.
So if it's a very interesting dynamic, so in particular between the traditional OTA model and you. So if I'm an individual homeowner, do I list on Airbnb or do I list on Booking? How do I make more money? How do I manage that? And Booking has been very clear, no customer fees. It's all commission. Customer fees are not customer friendly. So is there room for both? Certainly from a homeowner perspective, I don't think most individual owners probably go through, they're not using revenue management, right, and trying to figure out, what should they price it and how am I what's going to generate more bookings for me and more income.
So I think we need to differentiate between an individual renting out their primary residence and does it compensate for him or her to go through the entire hassle of cross-listing, maintaining different calendars on different platforms and so on, or not. I think what we've seen at least is that a lot of the primary homes stay unique to our platform because we are so well tailored to providing exactly that kind of offering, whether it's from the user experience or from the customer service point of view. But there's definitely a lot of listings that more professionally managed that are going to cross-list and going to try to balance the income and the revenue that they take across the different platforms. So yeah, no doubt.
So one of the things that you've also introduced is like a Lux category. Now there's Airbnb Plus,
Yep.
a kind of, which I see as basically a kind of the introduction of standards or a professionalization a bit of the sector. So is that, are we going to see, is that where the industry is going, and are there going to be more categories? And is there going to be is there a hotel category, or could there be a future, like what does that look like in the future for you? Because right now, like, you don't have filters really, like in other OTAs. So
we have quite a lot of filters, like what is the property type, what
okay.
are the
Okay.
what are
Yeah.
the locations, price range, and so on. But I take your point, right?
Yeah.
I think as we grew up and throughout that whole evolution from home sharing to accommodation to travel, it is hard to find what exactly you're looking for. So this is one of the things that we wanted to make easier. And the first thing that we did, like I said before, was provide clarity to what exactly are you reserving. Is it a home? Is it a dedicated rental? Is it a bed and breakfast? Is it a room? Is it a unique property like an igloo or a tree house or something like that? So that's the first thing. We have all the data, but it wasn't there in a structured way. So that's the first thing. It makes it easier. Then with Plus, you basically tailor to the people who had that barrier of saying, is Airbnb really for me? Like, I'm not sure what to expect. And we go through a checklist of 100 points individually, so every listing at a time, where we can basically then guarantee that, yeah, you'll have broadband Wi-Fi, and there'll be 24-hour check-in, and so on and so on. So it's for the people who are a little bit more skeptical, who think that maybe it's not for me. We have better arguments now to convince them, try it out, because we've checked these 100 points for you.
Douglas, we have a, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Continue.
And the Lux or the Beyond business that we've announced takes that to the next level, and there's a checklist of 250 different points.
Okay.
A question from the floor.
Valentin Dombrovsky, MySquare. Jeroen, I want to get back a bit to one of your points, speaking about like emotional feeling about Airbnb, and that customers feel so well about Airbnb that they recommend it, and so on and so on. But what I also know from company history and from what I've read, that Airbnb is actually doing a lot on enhancing its referral program and enhancing this viral component that we are talking about. So my question would be, maybe a bit arguing with your point, so is it customer emotional feeling towards Airbnb that drives this organic traffic that we are talking about? Or is it Airbnb knowledge about people behavior and skills to drive this viral effect that actually drives organic traffic? And I think it will be useful for people in the audience to understand that organic traffic is not so organic as it seems.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So a really good question. Thank you for that. So I think at the basis of everything, no matter whether you have a referral program or not, people are not going to refer to you unless they feel that they have something that offers value to them and they can recommend it, right? So we have a lot of referral programs, and we're continuing to optimize that. So there's a big part of that. But you're only going to continue to do that if you had a great experience. You're not going to refer somebody if something just happened and you weren't really entirely happy with the experience, right? So I think that's the first point. The second point is, as part of that referral program, we actually wanted to make sure is that it goes bigger, and that the NPS that we really like, our NPS score is above 70% for a hospitality company, is incredibly high. That we can continue to foster that. So we're not optimized necessarily for transaction, which would make that virality a lot easier, we're optimized for trust, right? It's not that easy to register on Airbnb. It's not that easy to get in touch with a host and so on. There's a couple of things that we're doing in order to make it easier, but we don't want to be necessarily a transactional company. We want to be a trust company. So a lot of these things that we are doing goes back to that, and then obviously the virality is something that goes with that. It's something that we have to cherish. It's something that sets us apart.
You have one question? Okay.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a journalist for Hospitality Insight in Germany. I have two quick questions for you, Jeroen. The first one, your company has actually grown tremendously fast over the years, and it seems that according to experts and analysts, you reached a certain plateau in terms of growth and inventory. I would like to know what you think about that. And the second question would be about the gray areas in terms of legislations that your company has benefited and played with or played around over the years as well to grow and spread. And it worked pretty well. But today, it seems that many cities are restricting their legislations or make it clearer for companies like yours. And I would like to know if it's going to prevent you from growing as fast as you did over the past years.
I just want to make a point that neither of those questions are quick. However,
and I have 2 minutes. So our growth rates are still above 50%, right? With the size that we are at the moment, I'm not worried about the growth rates. Obviously, if you look at percentage growth, your percentage growth as you continue to grow in mass volume is going to slow down percentage-wise, but still the absolute numbers are going to continue to rise. So I'm not worried about our growth rates, and I think we're in pretty good shape. About the regulation, it's a very long discussion, obviously. We don't play with regulation. We want to make sure, at the size that we are at the moment, is we are looking proactively for a regulation. We invest a lot of time and a lot of resources in working with national governments, regional governments, city halls, and so on, in order to explain some of the concepts that we've seen in some of the other cities, whether it's over-tourism, housing, and so on, whatever the issue is, or depending on what the issue is, what are the directions that we're able to go. This is not something that you play with. I think we're a very responsible player, and we have a role to play in providing and working towards a regulation. We just want it to be fair. So we're seeing that the more we debate and the more communication we have, the more advancements we have, and the latest regulations in some of the cities, I don't know, London, Berlin, and so on, go into that direction, right? Where the thing that is fairly new towards collaborative consumption, home sharing, and so on, is now becoming regulated in a very similar way across Europe, across different jurisdictions. That's something that we cherish, and it's something we work together towards.
Okay, so really quick, flights, not in the near term.
Flights is something that at the moment we're evaluating, seeing what should we do if we want to do it, and if we have something to announce, we'll announce it.
Other transportation, car rental?
Same thing.
So the big announcements from a year and a half ago were just visionary.
Okay, the announcement that we made a couple of years ago is saying, look, if we want to be an overall travel company, there's some of the things that we cover, which is accommodation. There's some of the things that we are covering now in the moment of scaling up with like experiences. There's some of the things that in the future we want to look at what is the right way to cover.
But experiences, you guys are doubling down, going all in.
Yes.
So and when am I going to see the hop on, hop off bus tour, Disney World tickets, and all the things that most tourists still do in destinations? Is that going to happen anytime soon?
Anytime soon? No, this is not something, again, you can find that on plenty of other platforms. This is not something that would be unique to Airbnb, therefore it doesn't have a place.
Okay. Very last question. At the end of the day, I get to interview your predecessor who's gone to Booking.com. So if you were me, what would you ask Olivier?
Interesting one. He's got a bit of time to prepare for it, so ask him what he is most proud of looking back at his time at Airbnb.
Oh, that's boring. Come on. Let's get some. I want some dirt.
Ask him about the biggest mistake he made.
Absolutely.
Apart from moving to Booking.com.
Okay. Anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeroen Begeers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.